I just think your kids would enjoy the educational toys more. They're so intellectual, my mother said, her voice carrying that familiar sugar-coated edge as she placed another wrapped box under the Christmas tree. For my sister Amanda's children, a PlayStation 5, designer clothes, and noise-canceling headphones. For mine, discount store drawing pads and half-price board games still marked with clearance stickers. I watched from the kitchen doorway, coffee mug clutched too tightly in my hand. The familiar ache of disappointment settled in my chest as I surveyed the scene. My parents' living room transformed into a holiday wonderland, with my children's meager pile of presents looking like an afterthought beside the mountain awaiting my sister's kids. "Mom, we talked about this," I said, keeping my voice low so the children playing in the basement wouldn't hear. "Tyler asked for those new basketball shoes for months. They don't cost any more than what you spent on Maddie's headphones." My mother sighed dramatically, arranging a giant bow on a box that undoubtedly contained the latest trending toy for my niece. "Carolyn, please don't start this again. Your sister's going through a divorce, and the kids need extra support right now. Besides, your children have everything they need. You and Mike have good jobs." "Amanda has a better job than either of us," I countered, though I already knew it was pointless. "And she got that huge settlement from Brad." "That's different," my father chimed in from his recliner, not bothering to look up from his newspaper. "Amanda's always had expensive taste. Her kids expect a certain lifestyle. And mine didn't, because I hadn't raised them to measure love in dollar signs. Now I was being punished for it. How is that fair?" I asked, the question that had been burning inside me for years finally escaping. My mother's shoulders stiffened. "Life isn't fair, Carolyn. Your children don't need that much anyway. They're happy with simpler things." I set my mug down before I could drop it, a calm settling over me that felt strangely like clarity. Every holiday, every birthday, every special occasion, the same pattern repeated. My sister's children showered with expensive gifts and attention, while mine were expected to be grateful for the scraps. And when I objected, I was the problem. "I think we're going to head out early," I said quietly. "Don't be ridiculous," my mother scoffed. "Christmas dinner is in an hour. The kids haven't even opened their presents yet." "We'll take ours with us," I replied, already moving toward the basement door to call my children. "Tyler has a basketball game tomorrow morning anyway." "You're being overly sensitive." My father finally looked up, annoyance clear on his face. "Don't ruin Christmas with your pettiness." Pettiness. As if wanting my children to be treated equally was some trivial grievance. "Merry Christmas," I said, and for the first time in my life, I walked away from my parents' disapproval without apologizing. I didn't know it then, but that moment, standing in their perfectly decorated living room with Bing Crosby crooning about white Christmases in the background, was when everything changed. Not just for that holiday, but for all the ones to come. "Mom, is Grandma mad at us?" Tyler asked 3 weeks later, sprawled across our living room couch with his homework. At 13, he was growing so fast I could hardly keep him in shoes, much less the expensive ones he coveted. "No, honey. Why would you think that?" I kept my tone casual, though my stomach tightened at the question. He shrugged, pencil tapping against his math textbook. "She hasn't called since Christmas, and Emma said Maddie got a new phone, but Grandma didn't send me anything for my birthday last week." I put down the dinner plates I'd been setting on the table and walked over to him, perching on the arm of the couch. "Grandma and Grandpa have been busy lately." "Because of Aunt Amanda's divorce?" he asked, too perceptive for his age. "Maybe," I answered, though I knew better. My parents hadn't called because I hadn't called them first. I hadn't apologized for ruining Christmas by leaving early. The familiar cycle. They would favor Amanda's children, I would object, they would make me feel unreasonable, and I would eventually cave and apologize to restore peace. But not this time. My phone buzzed with a text. "My sister, Mom's upset you haven't called. You know how she gets when you're stubborn." Another buzz. Also, she wants to know if the kids are free next weekend. She's taking Maddie and Jake to Great Wolf Lodge and said your kids could come if you drive them there. My fingers hovered over the screen. The old Carolyn would have said yes. would have driven 2 hours each way so my kids could tag along on a trip my parents were fully funding for Amanda's children. Would have listened to Tyler and Emma gush about how generous Grandma was, while knowing she hadn't contributed a dime toward their gas or meals. Sorry, we have plans that weekend, I typed instead. 3 dots appeared immediately. What plans? Family plans, I replied and set my phone face down on the table. Tyler was watching me. Was that Grandma? On Amanda, I corrected. How about we go to that new trampoline park this weekend? Just the 4 of us? His face lit up. Really? Can we get pizza after like last time? Absolutely, I promised. That weekend, while my sister posted photos of her children with my parents at the indoor water park. Blessed best grandparents ever. Mike and I took our kids to jump on trampolines for hours. We ate too much pizza, played arcade games, and didn't once mention my parents or cousins. It was Emma, my 10-year-old, who surprised me on the drive home. I like our family better small, she said from the back seat, cheeks still flushed from exertion. Nobody yells or makes you feel bad. Mike caught my eye across the console, his expression mirroring my own realization. Our children had been noticing more than we'd given them credit for. The calls and texts from my parents grew more frequent as Valentine's Day approached. Then Easter. My mother left voicemails about missing the children. My father sent rare text messages asking when we were getting over this nonsense. Amanda alternated between guilt trips and anger. The kids are asking about their cousins, she texted in March. Mom says you're keeping them away to punish her. I'm not punishing anyone, I replied. I'm protecting my children from feeling less valued than yours. That's ridiculous. Mom and Dad love all their grandchildren the same. I didn't bother responding to that one. In April, my mother escalated. I've put money aside for all the grandchildren's college funds, she said when I finally answered one of her calls. But if you're going to keep the children from us, I'll have to reconsider Emma and Tyler's portions. The old familiar guilt rose up, but something else rose faster. Anger. Are you threatening to financially punish my children because I'm not bringing them over to be emotionally punished anymore? I asked, my voice steadier than I expected. Don't be dramatic, Carolyn. I'm simply saying actions have consequences. Yes, I agreed. They do. I hung up, then sat at my kitchen table, hands shaking slightly. For years, I'd convinced myself that maintaining family harmony was worth any personal cost. But I'd never considered what it was costing my children to watch their cousins be blatantly favored, to internalize the message that they somehow deserved less. That night, I talked with Mike. Really talked. Beyond our usual exhausted exchanges about work schedules and household tasks. I think I need to set some actual boundaries with my parents, I said. Not just taking a break from seeing them, but making it clear what needs to change. Mike, who had watched this pattern play out for our entire 15-year marriage, nodded. It's about time. But what happens if they don't change? I hadn't gotten that far in my thinking, but as soon as he asked, I knew the answer. Then we keep our distance, permanently if necessary. The thought was both terrifying and liberating. The next day, I did something I'd never done before. I called my parents' bluff. I emailed them both, outlining exactly what I'd observed over the years and how it had affected my children. I attached photos of Christmas mornings and birthdays showing the stark disparity in gifts. I included screenshots of text messages where they'd made promises to my kids that they'd broken while keeping similar promises to Amanda's children. I'm not asking for special treatment. I wrote at the end. I'm asking for equal treatment. If you can't or won't provide that, we'll need to keep our relationship limited to occasional adult interactions without the children. I didn't expect what happened next. She's lost her mind, I heard my mother saying as I approached my parents' front door 3 days later. I'd agreed to meet them in person after they'd called, claiming they wanted to work things out. Just let me handle it, my father replied. We'll remind her who's helped them out all these years. I almost turned around right then, but something kept me moving forward. I knocked instead of using my key. My mother answered, her surprise at the knock quickly masked by a practiced smile. Carolyn, come in. We were just talking about you. I heard, I said simply, following her into the living room where my father sat in his usual recliner. Your email was completely uncalled for, he began without preamble. Making accusations like that, keeping track like some kind of accountant, that's not how family works. Actually, that's exactly my point, I said, remaining standing, though my mother gestured toward the couch. Families shouldn't require an accountant to ensure children are treated equally. We do treat them equally, my mother insisted. Just because we don't document every little thing we do. I've been documenting for years, I cut in. Not intentionally at first, but when you see enough pictures with one set of grandchildren opening expensive gifts while yours get dollar store coloring books, you start noticing patterns. Your sister needs more help, my father said dismissively. Always has. Does she? I asked. Or have you just convinced yourselves of that because she's better at playing the victim? Amanda makes more money than Mike and I combined. Her children have never gone without. This isn't about money, my mother said, though we all knew it was at least partly about money. It's about family supporting each other through difficult times. I agree, I said, which is why I'm asking you to support me now by acknowledging the pattern and committing to change it. My father leaned forward, his expression hardening. You know, Carolyn, we've been very generous with you over the years. Who paid for your wedding? Who gave you the down payment for your house? There it was, the reminder of all I supposedly owed them. The implication that their love and support came with strings attached. You did, I acknowledged. And I've been grateful. But conditional generosity isn't actually generosity, Dad. It's control. My mother gasped as if I'd slapped her. How dare you? After everything we've done? I'm not saying you haven't done anything for us, I clarified. I'm saying you've done considerably more for Amanda and her children, and when I point that out, you make me feel ungrateful instead of addressing the disparity. This is ridiculous, my father stood up. If you think we're going to sit here and be lectured? I'm not lecturing, I said, though my heartbeat quickened. I'd never stood my ground with them for this long before. I'm setting boundaries. Either my children get treated the same as Amanda's, same quality of gifts, same attention, same opportunities, or we'll continue keeping our distance. So you're holding your children hostage? My mother accused. No, I'm protecting them from feeling like they matter less than their cousins. I reached for my purse. Think about what I've said. If you're ready to make changes, let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you at major family functions but without Tyler and Emma. You'll regret this, my father called as I walked toward the door. Family is everything, Carolyn. I paused, turning back. I agree completely. That's why I'm putting my children, my immediate family, first. I left their house feeling lighter than I had in years, despite knowing the battle was far from over. The next few months passed in a strange new reality. My parents called less frequently, but when they did, their tone had changed. Gone were the demands and guilt trips, replaced by cautious questions about the children's activities and interests. They sent birthday cards with modest checks, the same amount, I later learned, that they'd sent to Amanda's children for their birthdays. Amanda was less adaptable. You've ruined everything, she accused over the phone in July. Mom and Dad are keeping receipts now. They're literally counting down to the penny what they spend on each kid. Good, I said simply. Good? It's weird and uncomfortable. It's fair, I countered, and that's all I asked for. The kids noticed, she pushed. Jake asked why his birthday present wasn't as big as last year's. I bit back the retort that my children had been noticing the difference for years. Maybe this is a good opportunity to teach him that love isn't measured in dollars. She hung up on me. By Thanksgiving, the new normal had settled in. My parents invited us for dinner, specifying that all the grandchildren will be receiving the same gifts this year. I accepted the invitation, but warned Mike to be prepared for potential drama. Surprisingly, there wasn't any. My mother had wrapped identical gift bags for all 4 grandchildren, modest but thoughtful items based on their individual interests. My father engaged Tyler in conversation about basketball with the same enthusiasm he'd always shown for Jake's soccer. When Emma mentioned her school art show, my mother asked for details and promised to attend. It wasn't perfect. I caught my mother's pinched expression when Jake complained that his gift wasn't as good as last year's. I noticed my father's momentary hesitation before complimenting Tyler's recent game performance. But they were trying, which was more than I'd expected. After dinner, while the children played a board game and Amanda helped my father with the dishes, my mother pulled me aside. "I want you to know," she said stiffly, "that we've restructured the college funds, equal amounts for each grandchild now." I nodded, unsure what to say. "Your father and I," she paused, visibly struggling. "We didn't see it. The difference in how we treated them. It wasn't intentional. It was the closest thing to an apology I was likely to get. Thank you for equalizing the college funds," I said. "That means a lot." She nodded, then hesitated. "Amanda says we're being ridiculous, that her children need more support because of the divorce." "Her children deserve support," I agreed. "But so do mine. Different families have different challenges." "I suppose," she conceded, though I could tell she wasn't fully convinced. "Progress, not perfection," I reminded myself. Christmas arrived with a dusting of snow and the usual mixture of anticipation and trepidation. We gathered at my parents' house, the first major holiday since our confrontation. I'd spent weeks preparing Tyler and Emma, cautioning them that things might be different, but offering no guarantees. The living room looked the same as always: the enormous tree, the color-coordinated decorations, the meticulously arranged presents. But this year, I noticed immediately, the gifts were distributed evenly. 4 piles of approximately the same size, with the same number of packages in each. "Did you count the presents?" Mike whispered, amused. "Didn't have to," I whispered back. "My mother did." When the children began opening their gifts, I watched my parents carefully. They maintained the same enthusiasm for all 4 grandchildren's reactions. Emma's excitement over art supplies received the same attention as Maddie's delight with her new clothes. Tyler's basketball accessories earned the same admiration as Jake's gaming equipment. Amanda noticed too. I caught her puzzled glances, her slight frowns when our parents didn't make a bigger fuss over her children's reactions. But she said nothing until later, when we were alone in the kitchen preparing dessert. "So this is the new normal?" she asked, her tone deliberately casual as she sliced the apple pie. "Everyone gets exactly the same, down to the penny?" "Would you prefer they go back to favoring your kids?" I countered, arranging cookie platters. She had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "It's not like I asked them to do that." "But you didn't object to it either." She set down the knife. "Look, I know you think I've had it easy." "I don't think that at all," I interrupted. "I know the divorce was hard. I know single parenting is challenging. But my kids matter too, Amanda, and they deserve better than being treated as an afterthought." She was quiet for a moment. I didn't realize how obvious it was. To them or to me? Both, I guess. She resumed cutting the pie. "For what it's worth, I think what you did took guts. I'm not sure I would have had the courage to stand up to them like that." It wasn't quite an apology, but coming from my sister, it felt like one. Later that evening, as we prepared to leave, my mother handed me an envelope. "For you and Mike," she said. "Don't open it now." In the car, once the children were occupied with their new gifts, I opened the envelope to find a check for a substantial amount. "What's this for?" I asked when I called her the next day. "We realized we've given Amanda extra financial help over the years," she said, that familiar defensive note creeping into her voice. "This is to even things out." "You didn't have to do that." "Yes," she said after a pause. "I think we did." It wasn't just about the money. It was the acknowledgement, tangible proof that they recognized the imbalance and were actively working to correct it. Not perfectly, not without occasional backsliding, but sincerely. The following Easter, when my parents suggested a family vacation with all expenses paid equally for all grandchildren, I knew we had turned a corner. It wouldn't erase years of disparity overnight. My children might always carry some of those early wounds of feeling less valued. My relationship with Amanda remained complicated, her resentment at losing her privileged position occasionally surfacing. But as I watched my father teaching both Tyler and Jake to fish off the dock of our rented lake house, giving each boy the same patient attention, I felt a sense of quiet victory, not the dramatic courtroom confrontation or public humiliation outlined in revenge stories, but something more meaningful, a family slowly healing, recalibrating, learning to distribute love more evenly. "You know what's funny?" Mike said, joining me on the porch as I observed the fishing lesson. "Your parents are actually building better relationships with our kids now. Tyler talks to your dad more than he ever did before. He was right. In forcing my parents to see all their grandchildren clearly, I'd inadvertently given them the opportunity to discover genuine connections they'd been missing. That night, Emma crawled into my lap despite being too old for such displays at 10 and a half. "I like coming to Grandma and Grandpa's now," she whispered. "Nobody makes me feel weird anymore." I hugged her close, the weight of her trust both humbling and empowering. This was what the fight had been for. Not the equal gifts or balanced attention, but this, my daughter's certainty of her own worth in her family's eyes. The true cost of fairness, I realized, hadn't been the uncomfortable confrontations or strained relationships. It had been the years I'd waited to demand it, years my children could never get back. But as I watched Emma join her brother and cousins for a board game, her laughter uncomplicated by the shadow of comparison, I knew the price had been worth paying. Some victories aren't measured in the defeat of others, but in the restoration of balance. In a family learning, however imperfectly, that love isn't a finite resource to be unequally distributed, but an expanding force that grows stronger when shared fairly. And that, in the end, was justice enough.